The first rule of combat is knowing your enemy's patterns. Katherine thought 23 years of marriage meant she knew mine. The weekly security briefings, the late nights at the office, the constant business trips. What my wife didn't know was that before I protected billionaires, I hunted terrorists for a living. She was about to learn that a man who spent 30 years studying patterns doesn't miss lipstick on a collar. My name is Marcus Stone, and at 52, I've learned that coincidences in life are usually just patterns we haven't bothered to see. I stood in our walk-in closet, holding David Turner's dry, cleaning receipt that had fallen from Katherine's jacket pocket. Portland's Riverside Cleaners, where we'd never gone in our 2 decades living in West Hills. The paper was crisp between my fingers as I folded it precisely, the way I'd learned to fold maps during my SEAL days. Old habits die hard. Marcus. Katherine's voice drifted up from the kitchen. The Hendersons will be here in 20 minutes for dinner. Coming down, I called back, my voice steady as a rifle mount. I slipped the receipt into my wallet and checked my reflection in the mirror. The face looking back hadn't changed. Sharp features, gray at the temples, eyes that had seen enough combat to know when a battle was worth fighting. Downstairs, Katherine moved through our kitchen like she owned it, which she did, on paper at least. Her blonde hair caught the evening light, expensive highlights doing their job. She'd been at the gym again, wearing those new Lululemon outfits that had started showing up in her closet 3 months ago. "Did you pick up the wine I asked for?" She didn't look up from the appetizers she was arranging. "Hendersons prefer whiskey." I poured 2 fingers of bourbon, watching her shoulders tense slightly. "Tom mentioned it at the club last week." "Since when do you and Tom Henderson talk about drinks?" "Since his construction company started looking for better security." I took a slow sip. A lot of equipment theft these days, especially around David Turner's sites. The knife paused over the cheese board. A micro-expression, gone in a flash. 20 years running Stone Shield Security had taught me to read people better than any polygraph. Sarah from Morning Brew had been the first to notice. "Your wife sure likes her parent-teacher conferences," she'd said last week, wiping down the counter next to where I got my morning coffee. "Third time this month I've seen her, and that Turner fellow here. Sweet man, raising his kid alone and all." Her eyes had met mine, with the deliberate look of someone who'd spent 30 years watching people's stories play out over coffee cups. The doorbell rang. Katherine straightened her silk blouse. "Can you get that? I need to finish this." "Sure thing." I moved toward the door, combat boots silent on hardwood. Some habits you keep, like situational awareness, like noting every exit in a room, like knowing that sometimes the best intel comes from letting your target think they're still invisible. I opened the door to Tom and Jennifer Henderson, already calculating how to use their weekly dinner visit to my advantage. "Tom, Jen, come on in. Katherine's just finishing up in the kitchen." "Tom, let me show you that bourbon I was talking about." Behind us, I heard Katherine's bracelets clink against the marble counter, a sound like tactical gear being checked one last time before an operation. The game was on, and she didn't even know she was playing. The Hendersons left around 11. I watched their BMW disappear down our curved driveway, its taillights cutting through the Portland mist. Katherine was in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher with the methodical precision of someone avoiding conversation. The bourbon had done its job. Tom Henderson had talked freely about the construction industry's troubles, including David Turner's recent loss of the Riverside development contract. "Shame about Turner Construction," I'd mentioned casually over dessert. "Heard they underbid the River Park project." Katherine's hand had tightened around her wine glass, but she'd kept her smile fixed in place. I pulled out my phone and checked the tracker app. The black that represented Jim Crawford's taxi was parked outside the Riverside Inn, just like every Thursday afternoon for the past 3 weeks. Jim was a good investment. Bitter ex-reporters usually are. $100 a week to keep his meter running and his mouth shut. "I'm heading to the office early tomorrow," Katherine called out, closing the dishwasher. "Board meeting at 9. Taking your car?" I kept my voice neutral, the way I used it during hostage negotiations. "No, I'll grab a taxi. Parking's impossible downtown this time of year." I smiled at my phone. Jim would be waiting outside our house at 8:30, right on schedule. Smart thinking. The house security system pinged, motion in the back gate. Probably just a deer, but I checked the camera feed anyway. Old habits. Michael, our 17-year-old, was sneaking in through the garden. Kid thought he was being subtle, but he moved like a drunk elephant through the hydrangeas. "Your son's home," I said, watching the feed. Catherine's head snapped up. How do you know? Because he just trampled your flowers again. I opened the back door. In here, Michael. Now. He slouched in, reeking of cigarettes and cheap beer. His private school blazer was wrinkled, tie missing. Dad, I can explain, Dash. Save it. Where's Emma? She's at Ashley's house. Study group. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Try again. Ashley's in Aspen with her family. I held up my phone, showing the location dot from Emma's phone at the movies downtown. Both of you, living room. 5 minutes. Katherine started to say something, but I cut her off. Family meeting. No debate. 10 minutes later, both kids sat on a leather couch. Emma still wearing her movie makeup. Michael looking slightly green. I stood by the fireplace. Katherine perched on the armchair like she was ready to bolt. New rules, I said. You want to lie? Fine, but do it right. Emma, next time you go to the movies with that Wilson boy, don't post it on Instagram while claiming to be studying. Michael, the gardener, sends me photos of the trampled plants. He's ex-military. We serve together. And Katherine. I turned to my wife. Next time you want to meet David Turner, switch cars with someone who isn't being watched by every security camera at the Riverside Inn. The silence was absolute. 23 years of marriage, hundreds of combat missions, and I'd never heard anything quite like it. Emma started crying. Michael looked like he might throw up. But Catherine's face went through the same micro-expressions I'd seen on targets, just before they realized the game was up. Daddy. Emma's voice was small. How did you know about Jason Wilson? Because it's my job to know. I kept my voice gentle with her. Just like it's my job to know why your mother's been meeting her special friend from the PDA. Katherine stood up, face flushed. Children, go to your rooms. Now, sit down, I said quietly. All of you. We're going to have a long talk about respect, honesty, and consequences. And tomorrow, I smiled, the same smile I'd given hostage-takers and business rivals. Tomorrow we're going to start making things right. The next morning, I sat in my downtown office, watching Portland's business district wake up through bullet-resistant windows. Katherine had taken the kids to school, her last normal morning, though she didn't know it yet. On my desk, 3 folders lay open. David Turner's construction contracts, Katherine's detailed schedule for the past 6 months, and the draft announcement for the Katherine Stone Foundation for Family Values. My intercom buzzed. Mr. Stone? Jim Crawford is here. Send him in. I closed the folders as Jim shuffled in, looking like he'd slept in his taxi. His beard needed trimming, but his eyes were sharp as ever. Got something you'll want to see. He dropped an envelope on my desk. They switched hotels. Noticed your wife's car at the Arlington Club yesterday afternoon. Followed Turner there an hour later. I opened the envelope, examined the photos. The Arlington. Interesting choice. More expensive than the Riverside. Management's more discreet too. Jim scratched his beard. Except their new head of security used to work for you. I smiled. Robert Shin had been one of my best team leaders before opening his own firm. Still owe me for setting him up with his first clients. Good work, Jim. Take the rest of the week off. Keep the meter running. After he left, I made 3 calls. The first to Chun at the Arlington, a friendly chat about old times and the importance of backup security footage. The second to Tom Henderson, warning him about structural issues found in Turner Construction's previous projects. The third to my lawyer, finalizing the paperwork for the foundation. The charity event was Katherine's idea, in a way. She'd been pushing for more community involvement, wanting to establish herself as a philanthropist. We need to give back, she'd said last month. Show people we're more than just another security company. I'd agreed, watching her plan the perfect social debut while meeting her lover in hotel rooms. My phone buzzed. A text from Michael. Dad, can we talk? Alone. My office. 4 p.m. I sent back. The boy had his mother's looks, but my instincts. He'd figured out something was wrong weeks ago. Emma was different. She'd gone quiet after last night, watching her mother with new eyes at breakfast. 17 years old, and already learning how people could disappoint you. I'd arranged for her grandmother, my mother, to take her shopping after school. The old woman had survived my father's affairs in silence. She knew what to say. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. Come in. Jackson, my head of operations, entered with a tablet. Found something in Turner's financials. He's been moving money around, taking out loans. Looks like he's trying to buy out his partner. Forward it to Henderson. I stood up, checking my watch. Time to visit the Portland Art Museum. They're expecting us to tour the venue for the foundation launch. The museum director was appropriately impressed by the budget I outlined. The main hall will be perfect. High ceilings, excellent acoustics, space for 300 guests. We'll need full control of the AV system, I mentioned casually. For the presentation about family values. Back in my office, I reviewed the guest list Katherine had started. She'd invited half of Portland's upper crust, including David Turner and his children. Perfect. I added a few names. Turner's ex-wife, his former business partners, the bank managers handling his loans. A Greek chorus for the tragedy she was writing. Michael arrived at 4, looking older than he had last night. He stood at attention in front of my desk, shoulders straight. Dad, about the drinking. Sit down, son. I pushed a water bottle toward him. Let's talk about what it means to be a man who keeps his word. The Portland Art Museum gleamed under October rain, its columns lit up like sentries. Inside, 300 of Portland's finest mingled in the main hall, champagne flutes catching light from crystal chandeliers. Katherine worked the room in a black Valentino dress, her smile bright as tactical flares. She hadn't noticed that her personal assistant had been replaced by one of my security team, or that every server wore an earpiece. Quite a turnout, Tom Henderson said, appearing at my elbow. Shame about Turner's bank calling his loans yesterday. I adjusted my cufflinks, the ones Katherine had given me for our 20th anniversary. Market's unpredictable these days. David Turner arrived late, his children in tow. The boy looked uncomfortable in his suit. The girl kept checking her phone. Their father's construction company badge still hung from his belt. A man trying to project success while his world crumbled. He caught Katherine's eye across the room. She turned away too quickly, a rookie mistake. It's time, sir, Jackson murmured in my earpiece. Chen's team is in position. I took the stage, tapping the microphone. The crowd hushed. Faces turned expectant. Katherine beamed from the front row, David 3 seats away. Perfect sight lines for the cameras. Good evening. I'm Marcus Stone. Many of you know me as Katherine's husband of 23 years. I paused, letting the words hang. Tonight, we're here to talk about family values, about trust, about consequences. The screens behind me flickered to life. Security footage from the Arlington Club played silently. Katherine and David entering different elevators, emerging on the same floor. Timestamps marched across multiple scenes. Chen's team had done excellent work with the editing. Leadership means accountability. I continued, my voice parade ground steady. In combat, in business, in marriage. When I founded Stone Shield Security, I made a promise to protect what matters. Tonight, I'm keeping that promise. Katherine's face had gone pale. David Turner stood frozen, his daughter's phone slipping from nerveless fingers. On the screens, hotel meetings became restaurant encounters, became afternoon rendezvous captured from multiple angles. Dad, Turner's son's voice cracked. What is this? Ask your father about integrity, I said, my eyes never leaving Katherine. Ask him about the family values he discussed with my wife while his company's contracts disappeared. Ask him about the loans he can't repay. The room had gone silent except for the click of Katherine's heels as she fled toward the exit. 2 of my team smoothly blocked her path. The emergency exits were already secured. Force of habit. My mother taught me something valuable. I addressed the crowd. She said dignity isn't what you demand from others. It's what you demand from yourself. Tonight's event was meant to launch the Katherine Stone Foundation for Family Values. Instead, it's launching something else. My announcement that Stone Shield Security is expanding to Seattle. Fresh start. New territory. I looked at my children in the front row. Michael sat straight-backed, Emma's hand gripped in his. My mother next to them, steel in her spine. Proud of them, all 3. The folders on your chairs contain evidence of financial misconduct at Turner Construction. Those of you in banking and development will find it interesting reading. The second set of documents are divorce papers. Katherine, your lawyer can contact mine tomorrow. The screens went dark. In the silence, David Turner's daughter slapped him hard across the face and ran out. His son followed. Phones began lighting up around the room as Portland's elite did what they do best, spread the word. I stepped down from the stage, adjusted my suit jacket. Tom, I believe you mentioned something about a security contract earlier. Katherine hadn't moved. Her perfect mask cracked beyond repair. She thought she was writing a love story. Hadn't realized she was in a war story instead. Classic tactical error, underestimating your opponent's capabilities and resolve. "Marcus," she whispered as I passed. "How could you?" I stopped, gave her the same smile I'd used in 100 negotiations. "No, Katherine. How could you?" The rain had stopped outside. Portland's lights reflected off wet streets like shell casings scattered across a battlefield. Behind me, 300 people witnessed the end of a marriage and the beginning of a legend in Portland's business community. Sometimes the best victory is the one everyone else gets to see. The divorce proceedings moved with military precision. Katherine's lawyer, some downtown hotshot who'd never lost a case, lasted exactly 12 minutes in the first negotiation before calling for recess. I'd seen that look before, on lieutenants realizing they'd walked their platoon into an ambush. "Mr. Stone," Judge Martinez said, examining the documents spread across his chambers. "These financial records are comprehensive." He tapped the Arlington Club surveillance photos. "And legally obtained, I presume?" "Your Honor, every photo was taken by licensed security personnel on private property with the owner's consent." I kept my voice neutral. Stone Shield Security takes privacy laws seriously. The judge nodded slowly. "I see Mrs. Stone's name has been removed from the family trust. 3 years ago. Standard business practice, protecting company assets." I didn't mention that I'd known something was wrong the day Katherine started asking about offshore accounts. Some predators show their teeth long before they strike. Outside the courthouse, Jim Crawford's taxi idled in the October rain. He'd been busy, his phone loaded with shots of Katherine trying to get into the Arlington Club, being politely turned away by Chen's security team. Photos of David Turner's empty construction sites, his equipment being repossessed. Pictures worth 1,000 words, each one saying "finished" in Portland. My phone buzzed. "Michael, Emma's crying again. Grandma's here. On my way." I texted back. The kids had moved into the West Hills house with me. Katherine stayed at her sister's in Lake Oswego, her calls going straight to voicemail. Better that way. Clean breaks heal faster. The morning brew was on my route home. Sarah looked up as I entered, already reaching for my usual. "Heard about the museum," she said, sliding the coffee across the counter. "Whole town's talking. Turner's boy was in here yesterday, asking about barista jobs." "Good kid," I said, leaving a 20 in the tip jar. Shame about his father's choices. "Speaking of choices." Sarah nodded toward the window. Katherine stood on the sidewalk, staring in. She'd lost weight, her designer clothes hanging loose. Still wore her wedding ring. Still didn't understand that some boundaries, once crossed, can't be uncrossed. I walked out, coffee in hand. She flinched as the door chimed. "Marcus, please. The kids won't take my calls. Their choice." I sipped my coffee. "Like your choices. Like David's choice to leverage his company on a lie. I never meant to get caught." The coffee was perfect, bitter and strong. "You meant everything else. The lies. The hotels. Using David's kid to get close to Emma. You meant all of that." A passing cab slowed. Jim Crawford, right on schedule. "Always good to have witnesses." "The foundation board wants to keep the name," I said. "Katherine Stone family values." "Ironic, but it tests well with donors. Your sister called. Thinks you should try California real estate. Fresh start." I turned to leave. "Oh, and Katherine. David's ex-wife bought his company assets at auction yesterday. Turns out she's got quite a head for business. Tom Henderson's helping her restructure. You planned all of this." Her voice was barely a whisper. "From the beginning." "No." I looked back one last time. "You planned it. I just made sure you got exactly what you earned." The house was warm when I arrived. Mom had dinner going, pot roast from the smell. Michael sat at the kitchen counter, helping Emma with calculus. My daughter's eyes were red, but her chin was up. Strong, like her grandmother. "Dad." Michael straightened in his chair. "Seattle office called. Their security assessment is ready for review." I hung my coat, checking the house security panel out of habit. "All clear. All secure. After dinner. Family comes first." Mom nodded approval, her wedding ring catching the light. She'd worn it 30 years after my father's betrayal, a reminder that dignity outlasts disgrace. Tomorrow, I take it to the jeweler's, have it resized for Emma. Some legacies are worth passing on. The Seattle skyline looked different from the 48th floor of Columbia Center. Darker than Portland, more steel than glass. Stone Shield's new regional headquarters took up the entire floor, prime real estate with clear sight lines to Puget Sound. Jackson stood at the window, reviewing security protocols for the upcoming Microsoft contract. "Tower's camera placement needs work," he said, marking points on the tablet. "Their blind spots are a problem now. Get Chin's team up here next week." I checked my watch. Almost time for video call with Michael. He'd insisted on handling the Portland office's junior staff, training himself. Kid was a natural leader once he got his feet under him. My phone lit up with a text from Emma at Stanford. She'd made Dean's List again, signed up for summer internship at Stone Shield. "Like father, like daughter," she'd written. Proud of her, she'd turned down Catherine's attempts at reconciliation, chosen her own path instead. Sarah from Morning Brew had sold her coffee shop, bought into a restaurant chain. She still sent updates about Catherine's occasional appearances in Portland society pages. California real estate hadn't worked out. Turnout reputation mattered there too. Last I heard, she'd moved to Phoenix. Some deserts you choose, others choose you. Jim Crawford's taxi service had expanded to 3 cabs. He'd hired David Turner's son as a driver. Kid needed a break, and Jim had an eye for talent. They specialized in corporate accounts now, including Stone Shield's Portland operations. Sometimes the best assets are the ones you craft for broken pieces. The intercom buzzed. "Mr. Stone? The team from Homeland Security is here for the briefing. Send them in." I straightened my tie, the new one Emma had given me for Christmas. The door opened, and 5 federal agents entered. Their leader, a sharp-eyed woman in her 40s, carried the Portland Art Museum incident report. "Impressive operation," she said, spreading photos across the conference table. "Your handling of the Turner situation got our attention. We're looking to upgrade security at 12 federal buildings along the coast. Word is, you're the man who gets things done." I smiled, thinking of an old combat instructor's words. Victory isn't about who hits hardest, but who controls the battlefield. "Let's talk about your objectives." The meeting ran long. Good contracts usually do. By the time the agents left, Seattle's lights had turned the sound into a river of gold. Michael's face appeared on the video screen, looking tired but satisfied. "Training's done, Dad. Every new hire passed the integrity protocols. Even added some wrinkles of my own to the surveillance practical. That's my boy." I could see my old office behind him. He'd kept the layout, but added his own touches. Evolution, not revolution. "How's your sister's room coming along? Ready for summer break? Grandma's already planning weekly dinners." He paused, then Turner's ex-wife called. "Company's turning around. She's looking to bid on the new riverfront development." "Good. Competition keeps the market healthy." I made sure she got fair financing for the buyout. Some victories need witnesses, others need allies. The Seattle office hummed with late-night activity. 300 employees now, with another 100 starting next month. Each one background checked, each one aware of the Stone Shield reputation. Integrity isn't just a policy, it's armor against life's ambushes. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Judge Martinez. Divorce papers signed. Final hearing canceled. No contest. Attached was a photo of the documents, Catherine's signature at the bottom. Some battles end not with a bang, but with a pen stroke. I shut down my computer, grabbed my coat. The night security team snapped to attention as I passed. Not from fear, but respect. Outside, a light rain fell on Seattle streets. Different city, same mission. Protect what matters, stand your ground, never compromise. Tomorrow would bring new contracts, new challenges. Emma would call about her internship plans. Michael would expand the Portland training program. Mom would send pictures of her garden. Life would go on, stronger for having weathered the storm. Some men spend their lives running from betrayal. Others turn it into a foundation you can build on. Standing in the Seattle rain, I smiled. Katherine had taught me that, though not the way she'd intended. Sometimes the best lessons come from those who mean to destroy you. 2 years to the day after the museum event, I sat in my Seattle office reviewing acquisition reports. Stone Shield had just closed its 5th international contract, Singapore this time. The Wall Street Journal article on my desk called us the Navy SEALs of corporate security. Good headline, better results. My intercom crackled. "Sir, Jim Crawford's on line 1. Says it's important." "Marcus." Jim's voice had a smile in it. "Remember that favor you did for my taxi company? Just returning the courtesy." Spotted your ex and Turner at Phoenix Sky Harbor. They looked rough. Turner was begging her for cash. She threw a drink in his face. Appreciate the intel, Jim. How's the kid working out? Turner's boy? Made a manager last month. Kid's got your instincts. Spots trouble before it happens. The door opened and Michael strode in, power tie and combat boots. His signature look since taking over Portland Ops. Dad, you're gonna like this. Arlington Club just filed Chapter 11. Chin's buying it at auction. Good man. I check my watch. Your sister's flight landed yet. Just picked her up. She's setting up at the downtown office. Says Stanford's corporate security program gave her some ideas for the Asia expansion. My phone lit up with a text from Mom. Wedding venue booked for Emma's big day. That naval officer of hers finally proposed. Right there at Morning Brew, where Sarah's new restaurant is opening. Life has a way of coming full circle. 2 days ago, Katherine's sister called, trying to negotiate. Something about Katherine wanting to attend Emma's wedding. My daughter's response was pure stone. Tell her I learned about family values. Just not from her. The Seattle rain pattered against bullet-resistant glass. Below, Stone Shield patrol cars moved through downtown traffic, our logo catching streetlight. Each vehicle equipped with tech that started as Michael's training program innovation. Kid really was his father's son. My desk phone blinked. Direct line from Homeland Security. Another federal contract, probably. They liked how we handled things. Clean. Professional. Final. I looked at the 3 frames on my wall. Stone Shield's first business license. The museum event coverage that made us legendary in Pacific Northwest security circles. And a new addition. Emma's Stanford graduation photo, taken in front of the building that would house Stone Shield's first California office. Mr. Stone, my assistant again. Your realtor called. That penthouse in Singapore is yours if you want it. Perfect for the Asia expansion. I smiled, remembering Katherine's words at the museum. How could you, she'd asked. The answer was simple, decisively, completely, and without remorse. Just like they taught us in the SEALs. Just like I taught my children. Just like Stone Shield taught the business world. Book it, I told my assistant. And give me Tom Henderson. His daughter's running Turner's old company now. Might be time to discuss that Pacific Rim partnership. Outside my window, Seattle's lights blazed against the darkness. Strong cities, like strong men, don't hide from the night. They own it. Control it. Turn it into something that serves a purpose. My phone buzzed one last time. A message from Emma. Dad, found the perfect wedding venue. The Portland Art Museum. Same room where you taught me what integrity means. I texted back. Perfect choice. Some lessons need to be remembered. The rain kept falling. Good weather for new beginnings.